So some new news when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie investigation involving DNA. I've confirmed through sources that, and I wrote this down so I want to get it right, some DNA evidence from Nancy Guthrie's home has now been sent to the FBI's lab.
There is a latest development on the Nancy Guthrie case you need to know about right now. And before I tell you what it is, I need you to understand something. For the past 76 days, every single lead in this case has collapsed. Every promising piece of evidence, every detained suspect, every tip that had the internet in a frenzy, gone. Dead end after dead end. The investigators had DNA, but couldn't use it. They had a face on camera, but couldn't name it. They had gloves, they had a backpack, they had ransom notes, and one by one, every single thread unraveled. Then, on Thursday, April 16th, 2026, something shifted. News Nation's senior correspondent Brian Enton, the reporter who has been physically embedded in this investigation longer than any other journalist in the country, posted this on X. Some DNA evidence from Nancy Guthrie's home has been sent to the FBI's lab for advanced analysis. I am told the evidence includes hairs found in Guthrie's home. This comes after evidence has already been tested through a Florida lab the Pima County Sheriff's Office uses. That post hit like a shockwave. Because here is what people following this case already knew and what made that announcement so significant. This DNA had been sitting in a private Florida lab for 11 weeks. 11 weeks! The FBI had requested it over 2 months ago. And now, finally, the original hair sample had been physically transferred out of that lab and handed directly to the FBI's own laboratory for testing. And within hours, renowned genetic genealogist C.C. Moore, one of the most respected DNA experts in the country, went on Brian Enton Investigates and said something that stopped everyone cold. I've been really hoping that maybe they did have some hair to work with. Because of the more recent advancements in the field, hair absolutely can make the case solvable. That is the word she used. Not helpful, not promising, solvable. So tonight, we are going to break down exactly what this means, how we got here, and why this hair sample could be the one thing that finally blows this case wide open. Stay with me. This is where it gets real. Let's start with the science, because this is not a standard forensic situation, and understanding what makes this different is everything. C.C. Moore explained that the sample now in the FBI's custody is what forensic scientists call rootless hair. And her key point reframes the entire picture. If this hair had a root attached, the case would likely have been solved already.
Well, I've been really hoping that maybe they did have some hair to work with. Because of the more recent advancements in the field, hair absolutely can make the case solvable.
A root hair contains nuclear DNA, the gold standard of forensic evidence. Find a root, get a clean, instant genetic profile. The fact that we are still here, still waiting, tells us this hair had no root. And for decades, that meant it was useless. Rootless hair was collected at crime scenes, cataloged, and quietly set aside. The science simply wasn't there. That has changed entirely. Scientists can now generate SNP profiles, single nucleotide polymorphism profiles, from rootless hair. This technology did not exist until recently. The advancement is moving faster than most people realize, and it is now being applied to this case with the full resources of the FBI laboratory behind it. But understand the journey this hair took to get here. It did not go from the crime scene to the FBI in a straight line. DNA material collected from Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills was first processed by a private laboratory in Florida that the Pima County Sheriff's Office regularly uses. That evidence was described as mixed, meaning it contained genetic material from more than one person, making it significantly more complex to analyze. Sheriff Chris Nanos told a neighborhood watch group that untangling mixed DNA alone could take 6 more months, and confirmed that as many as 5 separate labs around the country were simultaneously working on the case. 5 labs, 6 months, and still nothing usable had emerged publicly. For 11 weeks, that hair sat in Florida. For 11 weeks, the FBI was waiting. And now it is in their hands, with their technology, and investigators are treating it as the most technically promising lead the case has produced. The FBI's official statement was carefully worded. There is no new DNA evidence in the Nancy GUthrie case. The FBI requested this material over 2 months ago. The Pima County Sheriff's Office sent it to a private lab in Florida. 11 weeks later, that lab has now transferred an original hair sample to the FBI laboratory for testing. We remain fully committed. From an agency that doesn't waste words, that carries weight. Not everyone is celebrating, though. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer issued a direct caution. Even with confirmed hair evidence now in FBI custody, investigators cannot yet be certain that hair belongs to the suspect. It could belong to a known visitor. It could belong to a family member. The result could still be a dead end. C.C. Moore acknowledged the same uncertainty, adding that the most important question is whether the hair belongs to someone unknown to the household. Let's just keep all our fingers crossed that this isn't from a known visitor to her home, or one of the family members, or Nancy herself. It really could help push the case across the finish line. This is not a verdict, it is a door opening, and after 11 weeks of waiting, that door is finally, genuinely open. Before we go further, we need to go back, because the timeline of January 31st into February 1st, 2026 is not just a series of facts, it's a sequence of moments that tells you exactly how calculated and how cold this crime was. Family members last saw Nancy around 9:45 p.m. on January 31st when they dropped her off at home for dinner. She was mentally sharp, but physically frail, with a pacemaker, limited mobility, and a daily medication regimen she couldn't miss. The garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. She was inside. She was safe. That was the last confirmed normal moment. Just before 1:50 a.m., her Nest doorbell camera was disconnected. Around 20 minutes later, another house camera detected movement, and minutes before 2:30 a.m., her pacemaker disconnected from her app on her phone. Her pacemaker, the device keeping her heart regulated, disconnected from its monitoring app at 2:28 in the morning. That is not a glitch. That means the device and the woman wearing it had moved out of range of her home network, in the middle of the night, against her will.
Investigators deployed a high-tech device called a signal sniffer, mounted on a helicopter to try to detect signals from Nancy's pacemaker. It found nothing. Sunday morning, a friend called the family. Nancy had not shown up for their weekly online church service. The family arrived at the house around 11 a.m. They found the back doors propped open. Blood on the front porch, confirmed as Nancy's. Her phone is still inside. Her shoes are still inside. Every belonging that said she had not chosen to leave, and nothing that said where she had gone. Savannah GUthrie later described the moment the family walked in and what they assumed. We thought that she must have had some kind of medical episode in the night and that somehow the paramedics had come, because the back doors were propped open, and that didn't make any sense. It didn't make sense then, and the question it raises now, who propped those doors open and why, is one investigators have never publicly answered. The most haunting image in this entire case is not a photograph of Nancy. It is a grainy frame from a doorbell camera. A masked man, standing on a porch at 1:47 in the morning, armed, deliberate, and to this day, completely unidentified. The footage showed an individual wearing a balaclava, black gloves, a full zip-up jacket, and a backpack. The person appeared to have a small flashlight held in their teeth, the kind used when both hands need to be free in the dark. He attempted to cover the camera lens first with his hand, then with shrubbery from the landscaping. He knew the camera was there. He had planned for it. The FBI identified the suspect as approximately 5'9" to 5'10", wearing an average build, wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack, a backpack sold at Walmart for under $11. But beyond this single figure, investigators have raised a theory that significantly expands the scope of what happened. Investigators looking at the security gate on Nancy's front door noted that it would be nearly impossible to break through from the outside. That led some law enforcement experts to consider whether a second individual may have already been inside the home when the masked person was captured on footage outside. Investigators explored the possibility the masked individual outside was waiting to assist someone already inside in getting Nancy out through the front door. This theory has not been confirmed by any official source, but it has not been dismissed either. and the FBI's continued canvassing of the neighborhood speaks to how seriously it is being taken. Brian Enton reported that residents told him FBI agents returned to the neighborhood asking about former neighbors who moved out shortly before Nancy vanished and about a home under construction nearby, specifically the names of contractors who had access to the area. Someone knew that house. Someone knew her routine. This does not look like a random crime of opportunity. A confidential source speaking to Brian Enton confirmed that as of recent weeks, investigators still have no name on the table. The people I've talked to that are still in the know on this investigation tell me there's no direct suspect right now. No name on the table. No name, no arrest. Just that silhouette on a camera and a hair in a lab that might finally identify him. On March 26, 2026, day 54 of the search, GUthrie sat down with Hoda Kott for her first public interview since her mother disappeared. What she said has stayed with everyone who watched it. She opened with 2 words: "We are in agony." But it was one specific moment, one question she had asked her own brother that cut through everything else. Savannah recalled asking him whether the abduction might have been because of her. He said, "I'm sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe." She broke down. "Which is too much to bear, to think that I brought this to her bedside, that it's because of me." She told Kott she wakes up every night in the middle of the night, every single night. And in the darkness, I imagine her terror, and it is unthinkable. But those thoughts demand to be thought, and I will not hide my face, that she needs to come home now. She spoke directly to her mother on camera. "Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter. Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again." There is a phrase Savannah and her siblings have returned to in almost every public appearance. It is never too late to do the right thing. Based on reporting from multiple outlets, this language appears to be deliberate. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindoffer noted that Savannah's public messaging seemed strategically crafted to maintain emotional connection with whoever sent the ransom notes, addressing them in terms that matched the spiritual language some of the notes contained. Every word, chosen carefully, directed somewhere specific.
Let's be precise here, because this is the section where speculation and fact must be separated very carefully. The most publicly discussed motive theory is kidnapping for ransom, targeted because of Savannah's prominence and perceived wealth. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindoffer stated that investigators identified this as the operating motive from the very beginning, and that the entire strategy of putting the Guthrie family on camera, making public pleas, and crafting messages directed at the captor was built entirely around that framework. A second theory, put forward by criminal profiler Dr. Ann Burgess, whose career helped shape the FBI's behavioral science methodology, is darker and more personal. Burgess told Brian Enton, "Is there retaliation? Is there revenge? Who would benefit from this?" She raised the possibility that the Bitcoin ransom demands may not reflect the true motive, suggesting they could have been introduced to mislead investigators. On the question of Nancy's current condition, this must be stated with care. Jennifer Coffindoffer posted publicly on X expressing her personal belief that Nancy did not survive the abduction and that the perpetrators showed no concern for her life. This claim has not been confirmed by any official law enforcement source. No body has recovered. The Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI have not stated publicly that Nancy Guthrie is deceased. The investigation continues to be treated as an active abduction case. What is confirmed, Nancy requires daily heart medication. Her pacemaker disconnected from its monitoring app in the early hours of February 1st. She has not been seen in 76 days. Investigators deployed a helicopter-mounted signal sniffer specifically designed to detect her pacemaker's Bluetooth output and found no signal. The family has not given up. The FBI has not given up. And the hair sample in that lab may be the reason neither of them has to. No story this large goes without controversy, and the investigation itself has become a story. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has faced sustained public pressure over how the case has been handled.
Critics focused early on the decision to release the crime scene before it had been fully processed, only for investigators to return days later and retape the area to recover additional evidence. That sequence of events fueled allegations of mishandling at the most critical stage of the investigation. A confidential law enforcement insider told Brian Enton, "Just because we have an incompetent lead doesn't mean that we don't care. We are completely with her and her family on this." That quote, from someone inside the investigation, became one of the most shared and debated statements in the entire case. Fox News separately reported that the lead investigator had no prior homicide experience. The Pima County Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to demand answers from Nanos about his department's handling of the case. Nanos pushed back on every allegation. On the homicide experience claim, he said, "This sergeant has been supervisor of homicide for over 2 years, and in that time he has solved some pretty significant, very high-profile cases for this area." On calls for his resignation, he called them white noise. On the allegations of mistakes, he said simply, "No, we don't believe there were any mistakes made." Then, on April 17th, the same week the hair sample news broke, the Pima County Sheriff's Department posted on X, "Update, Nancy has been located." The post referred not to Nancy Guthrie, but to a different missing elderly woman, Nancy Radakovich, 82, who had been found. The confusion was immediate and devastating for the millions of people following the case. The family later clarified, but the damage to public trust was real and swift. This is the backdrop against which a critical piece of evidence has now reached the FBI's lab. The science may be advancing. The confidence in the local handling of the investigation, for a significant portion of the public, has been eroded. To understand why this hair sample feels so significant, you have to understand what came before it. Every lead that looked like a breakthrough, and then fell apart. The gloves, found 2 miles from the house with unknown male DNA. The DNA did not match anything in the National CODIS database, and when investigators traced them further, the gloves belonged to a restaurant worker across the street, entirely unconnected to the case. The Walmart backpack. Investigators worked directly with Walmart management after confirming the suspect's backpack was an Ozark Trail brand sold exclusively at Walmart. They pulled sales records, reviewed surveillance footage, but the backpack costs under $11, had been sold in massive quantities, and could have been purchased secondhand. The trail went cold. The Range Rover. Law enforcement investigated a gray Range Rover in the parking lot of a nearby Culver's. The vehicle was seized and towed. No arrests followed. The detained men. A person was detained after 2 search warrants were served at a nearby home. He was later released. A law firm confirmed he had no link to Nancy Guthrie and no information related to her kidnapping. The ransom notes. Multiple notes arrived at media outlets including TMZ, some claiming Nancy was alive, others suggesting she had been killed. The FBI reviewed all of them. Early assessments indicated the first may have come from someone with genuine knowledge of the abduction. Later communications appeared to be from opportunistic scammers exploiting the case's visibility. A California man was arrested separately for sending a fraudulent ransom text entirely unrelated to the real abduction. The internet outages. Neighbors reported connectivity interruptions on the night of the disappearance. FBI agents asked specifically about internet outages in the area. A damaged utility box around the corner from the home was examined. The outage was never confirmed as connected to a deliberate act, and the utility box lead produced nothing. One by one, every thread unraveled. Until the hair. Here is the concrete question every person following this case is asking. What does the FBI actually do with this hair sample, and what could realistically happen next? Cece Moore was clear that the process is not fast. She said, "My experience is it can take several months." But she stressed the FBI would prioritize this case because it remains active and high profile, unlike the decades-old cold cases where this same rootless hair technology is being applied. Once a genetic profile is generated, the FBI runs it through CODIS, the national DNA database holding over 19 million offender profiles. A match there would produce an identification almost immediately. If there is no CODIS match, meaning the suspect has no prior DNA on file, investigators can turn to genetic genealogy. By uploading a DNA profile to genealogy databases, analysts can identify biological relatives of the suspect, trace family trees, and potentially narrow the field to a specific individual, even if that person has never been arrested or convicted of anything. This is the same methodology that broke open multiple previously unsolvable cases. The remaining challenge is the mixed profile, the introduction of more than one person's DNA within the sample. Even with the hair physically isolated, analysts must confirm the genetic material belongs to a single unknown individual before any meaningful comparison can be run. That step alone could take weeks. But the key fact remains: the FBI asked for this hair sample over 2 months ago. They have been ready. The technology is ready. The only thing that was missing was the sample itself, and now it is there. The family has also asked the public to think carefully about 2 specific dates, January 31st and the early morning of February 1st, but also the late evening of January 11th. In their words, it's possible a member of this community has information they do not even realize is significant. January 11th, 3 weeks before the abduction, something happened that night, or someone was seen that investigators believe is connected. We do not know what, but they do. About 24 Pima County and FBI investigators are still actively working this case. The combined reward stands at over $1.2 million, $100,000 from the FBI, $1 million from the Guthrie family. Here is where we are. A woman dropped off at her own home at 9:50 at night, whose back doors were propped open by morning, whose blood was on her front porch, whose pacemaker stopped syncing before the sun came up, who has not been seen in 76 days. A masked man on a camera who still has no name. A hair collected in February, held in Florida for 11 weeks, now finally in the most advanced forensic laboratory in the United States. C.C. Moore called it the first genuinely positive development she had heard in a long time. She said, "Let's just keep all our fingers crossed. It really could help push the case across the finish line." And somewhere, in a house, in a city, maybe close and maybe far, someone knows exactly what happened. They've been living with that knowledge for 76 days. The reward is still active. The FBI is still watching, and the science is now catching up to what that person thought they could hide. It is, as Savannah Guthrie has said over and over, never too late to do the right thing.